Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world, because we are everywhere as well. It's so nice to be back in webinars because in August we didn't do any because of the summer break. And this is quite an exciting one because I'm here together with, Magnums Butler Academy, together with Kim and with Josephine. And we're from all over the world because I'm in Mallorca. Where are you, Kim?
I'm in Antibes at the moment.
And Josephine?
I'm on the wonderful Sunshine Coast in Australia.
So all over the world, and I see that like Lisette, who's already said hi in the chat, is in Canada. So we're covering a lot of time zones at the moment. So it's really, really exciting. We're delighted to have Magnums with us. They've been they're a big supporter of A-Crew. They do a lot with us, and we believe they're a great company. So very much looking forward to this webinar. Let me formally introduce the two of you, and then I'll hand over, and then you can work your magic.
Thank you.
So what are we doing today? We are basically talking about handling your guests and maintaining luxury service in times of COVID-19, because it's still there. It's not disappearing, and we want. Josephine and Kim want to give you a bit of inspiration, some useful, effective, and diplomatic phrases, and some practical ideas. So it's going to be quite hands-on, isn't it, ladies? It's going to be quite hands-on, right? Fantastic. We are here together with Josephine Ivy, and she's the director and principal trainer. And I believe you're also the founder, aren't you, Josephine, of the company?
I am indeed. Thank you very much, Arno. Yes.
Yeah. And is there anything you would like to say about yourself, or anything that you believe the audience should know?
Well, only that Magnums Academy has been around for quite a few years. We're very involved in high-end luxury training, including the super yachts as well as hotels, resorts around the world. So, we're also the founders of 7-Star Service. So we have a lot to offer, and we're really hoping that all our viewers today are going to get something out of meeting with myself and Kim.
Well, thank you so much. And we are here with Kim Woody, who's a senior associate trainer at Yacht Service, based in Antibes, as she said. And Kim, anything we need to know about you, about your background, because you've been around in yachting for a while.
I have indeed, Arno, I have indeed. I trained as an English teacher and then moved on to do about 9 years working in yachting on both private and charter vessels. And I've been one of the associate trainers with Magnums for about 4 years now. We've been collaborating, which is great. So I assist with all the yachting programs and the onboard training for them.
So we got the right people here today.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, again, we're looking at handling your guests and maintaining luxury service in times of COVID-19. I mean, everybody has logged into this webinar because that's what they want to know more about. So without much further ado, I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to be gone. I'm still there. I'll keep an eye on the chat. We're recording this webinar so you can look it back afterwards. Feel free to add any questions to the chat, anything you would like to share. And we got some lovely people saying hi to us. So Pete and Nick, Laurel, Lisa, Charlotte, hi to you as well from all of us. And Kim, please take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you. There we go.
Well, Kim, here we are with Magnums Academy. And of course, we are looking at yacht service specifically, although Magnums Academy has quite a background in butler training as well. And we recognised a while ago that handling guests during this time of COVID-19 was particularly hard when you're trying to maintain the luxury service standards. And so we got our heads together and we've come up with a few ideas, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. We've actually been inundated with quite a few questions from chief stewards, from stewardesses, and from butlers as well. Just what are we supposed to do with our guests during this uncertain time, where there don't seem to be any standards? Is there a right way or a wrong way? Is one way better than the other? So yeah, we've come up with a couple of ideas which hopefully will be quite useful, and some practical things that can be put in place straight away if they're not already in place on board.
Yes, and I think it's really difficult because I work with a lot of hotels and resorts, and all through lockdown and over the last few months, I can see that not just our crew and staffing and people like that, but also the guests are a little bit confused as well. They're coming from different countries or different, areas, and every day it seems as though there's a different thing that's being recommended or dropped or implemented. So it is really confusing, isn't it? So I guess we first of all looking at the psychology of guests. What are your thoughts here on the psychology of guests at the moment? Because we've discussed this. I mean, people are a little bit sort of different, aren't they now? Primarily, they're wearing masks, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a bit interesting. I've spoken to quite a few friends who are working on board at the moment, and whose owners have actually decided to have a season and to use their boats, or they're on charter vessels. And it's interesting. There seem to be those who really just are not worried at all. Not even making use of hand sanitizers or anything like that. And then there are the other ones who are taking it to the other extreme, whereby they are kind of going completely to the other side and doing almost excessive, hand washing and cleaning and double checking on the crew, really making sure everything is clean, what precautions are happening on board. So there seems to be quite a disparity between how our guests are really feeling about this whole COVID situation.
Yes, and I think it's going over. Some people do go over the top. I've seen people, when they've been doing the hand sanitizer, they've made such an effort of doing this hand sanitizer. Everybody else feels as though, my goodness, I feel so dirty now, because they made such an act out of hand sanitizer. And other people just walk past it and just shrug them out. I don't need to do it. So it is very hard. And I think also that when people come in contact with other people, there's a different sort of feeling between not just guests, but between people themselves, isn't there? People are a little bit more unsure of what they should be doing. Should they hug? Should they shake hands? Should they do this? Should they take the mask off? There's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that sort of behaviour tends to sort of take away the enjoyment, and we don't want to take away the enjoyment of people enjoying their luxury stay on board, or their luxury anywhere that they can enjoy luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for us as crew who are working directly with our guests, especially front of house, those coming into direct contact with the guests regularly, that we are aware of the fact that other people may not feel the same way about COVID that we do. And that's something very important to bear in mind. You may have an owner who is perhaps quite a bit of a germaphobe. They are out there, who may be taking the whole COVID situation very, very, very seriously. And we need to respond in kind to that. We also need to be aware that, especially if we're having charter guests who are perhaps coming on for the first time, we don't know if any of our guests have perhaps lost any, friends or family due to COVID. So it may actually be quite a sensitive, emotionally charged topic for them. There will, of course, be those who, as we've said before, just really aren't bothered. And then, in that sense as well, as long as we are doing our due diligence from the cruise side, and I think then we can be pretty sure that we're on the right track.
Yes, and I mean, I was saying to you in when we were putting these ideas together, that only a couple of days ago in Hong Kong, a young 25-year-old man has been charged with reacting rather violently when he went into one of the McDonald's chains in Hong Kong, because he did not want to wear a mask and he was being told to wear a mask. So he wrecked the cash register and hit the attendant, and of course ended up being charged and being fined 4,000 Hong Kong dollars. And so, I mean, we have got people who are very rebellious and very angry, and how do we handle them? So,
absolutely.
Try and help people with here today. So, so wearing a mask, we're going to look at some of the whys and wherefores of wearing a mask. It would be really interesting, though, Kim, wouldn't it, to find out what's going on on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps, Anna, if we can have that little poll of what is everybody actually doing on board. Absolutely nothing because the boss isn't bothered, a little bit of something, or have they gone quite extreme?
I'm publishing the poll now, so everybody can see the poll in their chats, and please feel free to tick the answer. So what are you currently doing on board based on COVID-19, because we know you're working all very hard, so don't just say everything because we know you do. And the answers are coming in now, so we're on one third at the moment. We're going to give them a little bit more time.
Great.
So let's get some more answers in, everybody. Like, if this is the end result, so 1/3 nothing, 50% nothing at the moment, 20%, 5% a little bit, and 25% everything. That's that's an unexpected answer for me. I mean, you are in the midst of it. Let's give him a few more seconds. I think this is the end result. 50% nothing, 25% a little bit, and 25% everything.
Fabulous. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
That is surprising. Yeah, that is surprising.
very interesting.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, when it comes to masks, Kim, we were talking about masks and how some people don't want to wear a mask. It does depend where you're from, because you're in France at the moment, and I believe that there's one philosophy about masks there. In Asia, of course, it's masks, regardless. Here in Australia, it's a little bit more relaxed, unless you're in Melbourne and Sydney. I'm on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, so nobody's wearing a mask. And so, it's really very interesting. And of course, those people, those 25% or however many it was, who said they are doing everything, I don't know whether they're wearing masks or not, but, there are a couple of things that are changing people's personalities with masks, aren't there? Vanity for a start, I mean, I actually don't really like wearing a mask too much either, and yes, maybe I'm going to admit that I'm too vain to wear a mask, but I can understand that. But there's a lot of other reasons why people don't want to wear a mask, and that is that you can't actually see what the other person's saying, so you're missing so much.
Yeah, it is quite challenging, and I think, again, when we think about how the psychology, let's say, of our guests right now, I think the most important thing really is that whether we're dealing with guests or whether we're dealing with crew, that we are coming from a point of empathy.
Yes, and empathy is everything. I think you said a couple of minutes ago about we have to understand a little bit more about people. We have to show some empathy. But I think also we have to find out a little bit more about the other person in order to understand what they've been through. I don't know if anybody's felt the same as I have, that if you don't hear from somebody for a few days or something, you think, oh my goodness, what's happened? Have they got COVID-19? But we don't know what people have been through. We don't know whether they, what they've been exposed to. So, and maybe like everybody else, they're just simply tired of COVID-19 and they just want to move on with their life. And I think, that's causing a bit of stress. So empathy is, I think, a really key factor.
Absolutely. But there are still a couple of practical things, Josephine, that we spoke about sharing with the crew out there, and there are actually some useful phrases that we can use, and some practical things that we can actually put into play on a daily basis, just to help our guests feel more at ease, and even fellow crew members. As you mentioned already, if you are going to be wearing a mask when you are communicating with your guests, you're going to have to use your eyes more. You're going to have to use a lot more expression and movement in your face, a lot more tonality in your voice, and perhaps even speaking a little bit more slowly and clearly, because it might be a little bit muffled and they can't actually hear clearly what it is that you are saying.
I thought, yes, and I think that is one thing that I was amused today, actually, Kim, because I was reading some news about Japan, and Japan have brought out a new app and a series of apps in order that the karaoke can come back into everybody's life, and they have actually designed an app that actually helps people clarify their singing through a mask.
Through a mask.
So I thought that was quite amusing, because I think people's personality does change, people's eyes are much more serious, I've experienced, because they're wearing a mask. It's changed their personality. And so we've got to use those cheekbones, lovely, light up the eyes, you know, use the eyebrows. The eyebrows are an often forgotten part of our face to use, but now it's time to start exercising the forehead and the eyebrows. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And we have put our brains together as well and just come up with a few useful phrases that might be of value for crew members to be using. Some of these include, you know, whilst we're waiting for a vaccine, you know, we would like to encourage you to XYZ. We've been encouraged by our management company to protect you as guests by, and that's where you insert then obviously the policy that the management company has put in place. May we suggest that to set your mind at ease, we have a little sanitizing station in the main salon or masks available, etc. It's all really about how, you know, it's all about our guests, and it's always been about our guests. And I think what we don't want to be doing is scaremongering, you know, and saying things to keep you safe. This is what we're doing, keeping it light, you know, not making a big deal out of it, but at the same time showing it the due respect that is needed.
Yes, I think so. And I think not coming across as too bossy or, you know, sort of too formal about it, you know, I mean, sort of to use a bit of tact and diplomacy and sort of minimize the number of times that you mention that word, and, you know, so that it sort of calms people down a bit. I think the less those words are used, the better, actually, if we can do that. And one very useful phrase that I share with my butlers and teams that I am training, Kim, is an expression which is, you know, when somebody is complaining or when somebody is upset, is to say, I share your frustration. Yeah. And somehow or other, once you say that word share, you know, hopefully that person will feel a little bit better about it, and that it may just sort of throw some calm on troubled waters there for a few minutes. So
absolutely.
And I think also the tone of voice that we use is important, so that people don't get the impression that we're just saying it robotically. That, you know, we've got these phrases, they should come out easily, you know. So
yeah, we still want to sound natural. We don't want to sound like little robots when we're talking to our guests. It's definitely not, you know, it's not what we're suggesting at all by having, you know, set phrases at all. But it is just about, because we know the questions are going to come up. You know, we know that the chances are pretty good that our guests are going to ask us, well, so, you know, what do you think? Well, how, you know, how, what, and where? And it is good just to have something on the back burner that you can draw from, should you need to dive into one of those discussions.
Yes, I agree. And I think also that, you know, guests and all of us actually like to have our expectations managed. And I wonder if you have got lots of, you know, sort of things, procedures that have to be done. Sometimes a very well put together email in advance is well worth it, you know, because this sets it out so people have got that expectation. And managing expectation in advance. Sending a very nice email just saying, you know, we've been encouraged by our management to do this, this, and this, and sort of tactfully put it together, I think. And I think that's a sensitive approach, so everybody knows. So but if they don't, well, I know that is a challenge as well, but.
Yeah, it's interesting that last Friday I was doing some work down in a shipyard in Italy, and prior to arrival I received a full document of 8 or 9 pages from the shipyard outlining their full procedure during the whole, you know, because of COVID and what was expected from my side as a contractor coming into the yard, you know, and then telling me straight out, you know, if I didn't pass the thermal scanning, I would not be allowed to enter into the yard. Once I was in, you know, what the standard procedures were within the shipyard. So, you know, there were no surprises. There was nothing unexpected that could have come up there, really. Yeah.
And there is a lot for people to remember, and there is a lot of things that, you know, I sort of feel that sometimes it must be very hard, even I feel it as well, not to feel resentful about having to make all these changes in your style of service. You know, I mean, we have a style, we have a standard of service, and our luxury service, you know, we don't want to dilute that in any way. And I think sometimes we feel a bit resentful because we're having to bring all these other things which really, you know, on the face of it seem to be unnecessary. They are absolutely necessary, don't get me wrong. And one of my clients in Asia just recently, was the general manager was telling me that he's just opened his hotel, new hotel, and he found within the first 4 weeks that 8 of his management team, when they got themselves signed off by the doctor, because they really could not manage the stress of having to go through all of this COVID-19 stuff. You know, and so I think it's also, you know, time to take it sideways as well and think about your team, how they are actually managing it as well, not just how our guests are managing it. So people tend to, you know, sort of take it on board, don't they, and bottle it up. So
yeah, absolutely.
One of the other things that we discussed and we have done over the years, Kim, is about statements. I know this is not something that is necessarily across the board on yachts and yacht service and super yachts and what have you. But if I could just explain, in majority of the hotels and resorts or any of those properties that you might go to, we adopt what's known as brand language. And brand language actually is very useful because tact and diplomacy really come into play. But one of the real reasons why brand language is useful is it creates consistency, and that consistency across staff. So everybody is, you know, on the same page. They're all saying the same thing. And so up on the screen here at the moment, we're suggesting, we're not suggesting that you have a really strict branded language, but just some things that could be used as a script to bring in that tact and diplomacy when guests are asking questions.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, these words and phrases, you know, may be particularly useful to have them written up, type them out, pop them up in the crew mess, you know, especially for, you know, for members of the teams who are perhaps not English first language. Sometimes trying to express yourself clearly and in the most concise way. If English is not your first language and you are speaking English to your guests, that can be quite challenging, so it might make it a bit easier.
I think it is much easier, and you also know then that everybody is saying more or less the same thing. You know, they may use slightly different words, but branding the language, having those set things so that when a guest asks, and some guests will, you know, go and ask 2 or 3 crew members, hoping that they'll get a different answer from one person that fits with what they, rather than, you know, what they don't want to hear. So brand language really does help, just on a few phrases. And many people will know that, you know, one of the most popular branded language, aside from McDonald's Have a Nice Day, is that at the end of any sort of interaction with guests, you might say, "Is there anything else I may assist you with?" And that is a standard of branded language in order to make sure that the guest is completely happy. So you're checking their guest satisfaction. So that's the sort of expression I'm talking about. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know, Kim, if you've got any ideas, but I'm pretty sure that can be invoked on board yachts.
Yeah, it may be useful, absolutely. But again, we're not at all suggesting, you know, that crew members start sounding like they've just learned a script and that they're just reciting the script off because that's the answer that we have to give. That's not what we mean by this. But just to create consistency throughout the team, no matter whether the guests are speaking to the deck department, to the engineers, to the interior, even to the galley. You know, that they are getting the same kind of answers coming up.
Yes, and I think that, you know, I think we need to go back to that other phrase, "I share your frustration," maybe, and, you know, and use those sort of words for tact and diplomacy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it does beg the question then, how do we manage our potentially difficult guests?
Well, also, I mean, notwithstanding the little story that I said just now about the poor chap in McDonald's in Hong Kong, it would be interesting to know if anybody's had to manage any potentially difficult guests, because I know of a lot of situations in different retail and hotel environments where people have got a little bit upset over being asked to do socially distanced masks and so on and so forth. So that could be a question that we would like to ask our lovely audience here today. So,
Arno, are you happy to help us out with that?
Yes, I've already put in the question,
Wonderful.
although I just saw that my typing skills are not as good as I used. So did you have had any difficult guests? I don't think that's proper English, but I hope you get the question. So please, as we know that our audience having a 10-second delay, so they're getting this message a bit later.
yeah.
They need time to answer. So anybody, please feel free to put in some answers. Did you have any difficult guests related to this whole COVID-19 situation? Obviously, because the answer is yes for everybody, because we have owners and guests, and some of them are more complicated than others in general. But this is COVID related, so please answer us. By the way, Gabby has put a nice little message in there, and Gabby is a T2, and she said, luckily here are some pretty masks out there that match our uniform. So they got pretty mask matching their uniform. So how nice is that?
Yes, pretty masks rather than the horrible black ones.
Unless black fits your uniform. So Charlie is saying, luckily nothing so far. Let's see if there's anybody else that wants to reply on this. Any difficulty with guests?
Well, it's quite interesting. This is an expression that some people may or may not have heard, but that is the fact that I'm just going to throw a statement out, and that is that everyone actually has a COVID risk budget. And that means, in perhaps a little bit more simple terms, is that we're all prepared to take a risk at something. It's just that we've all got different things that we'll take a risk at. So, so it's quite interesting how that comes up with this managing potentially difficult guests, because those guests will, some people will go for the social distancing. Other people want to hug, and other people don't want to wear the mask. They want to kissy and everything. So. So we've all got we have got that budget inside us of what we will risk. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to risk, but
we got some more answers. So we got Laurel say that everybody was pretty understanding. Janusz, Captain Roma, that all my guests so far have been very understanding and cooperative in terms of COVID restrictions. Gabi from the masks said some guests were difficult with our onboard regulations, but we managed as a team. So it's a bit diversified in answers.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, it is interesting to get that sort of feedback, and maybe we'll get more in due course. But I think one of the things, and it sounded like one of those comments was that between the team they've managed to cope with these difficult guests, which is good when you've got that team spirit and everybody working together. Which brings us to our next slide, Kim, which is how crew come across to guests. So I'll let you talk for a little while.
Absolutely. Obviously, we know that our guests, especially if they are, it's the owner who is coming on board, or if they are repeat charter guests, they come back to the boat. Yes, because they like the boat, but they come back to a very large degree because of us. They come back because of the way that we make them feel, the way that we take care of them. So it's really important. People don't remember what we say to them. They remember how we make them feel. And yes, there are challenges, for us, especially if, we have to wear masks if that's part of the, you know, the procedure on board. But what's really important is that you know, that we keep our own opinions to ourselves. Now, again, I know a lot of people might shoot me down for this, but there are you know, certain owners who want to know all about your thoughts and your opinions on things, and there are other owners who really don't care, and who don't, you know, they come there for their vacation. They come there to disconnect, to be taken care of, and they are truly not interested whether you think COVID is a hoax or not, or whatever your opinions are. Again, our problems should never become an issue for our guests. When we step through that pantry door and we're in the guest area, you know, we should really have our game face on. There should be no moaning or any complaining. You know, it's really easy, especially if you have to wear a mask. I had to train with a mask on a couple of weeks ago, and it was really challenging. I breathe quite deeply when I'm talking because I get quite excited, and I kept finding the mask was getting stuck onto my face, which really wasn't particularly pleasant. But you know, it's part of where we are in the world at the moment. So I think it's really important, you know, if a guest says to you, you know, do you like wearing a mask? Without saying yes or no, maybe just come back with a neutral reply. Yeah, it's one of our necessary requirements for your safety. So, you know, we're smiling underneath here. That's what we're doing.
Yes, and I think it's, you know, again, comes back to our branded language, but not necessarily using the language, but you know, just all being on the same side and not sort of voicing your own opinions, as you say, no moaning, no poor me, you're all there, we're all in this together sort of thing. So, and I think it's really important that everybody comes across in a very natural, genuine way, you know, so that you really are still invoking that luxury service. That's what, as you said, Kim, quite rightly, that's what people come back for time and time again, is for you and for your service. So we shouldn't lose sight of that, and also to be mindful, be there in the moment, and not be robotic about it. So
Absolutely, definitely. There are quite a few practical measures that have been put in place globally at the moment, and obviously, Josephine, you focusing more on the hotel side of things, and we've done a bit of a comparison of what's been going on in hotels versus what's been happening on board. So there's quite a few similarities and a few differences as well.
Yes, and I should say that we just did this because, you know, some guests are going in to stay at hotels who are coming on board, so they will be, you know, seeing some differences there. So that may raise their expectation, or they may get annoyed with all the things that are being done in hotels. So you can see that on the left-hand side, we've listed the luxury hotels. Body temperature scanner on entry is mandatory in all hotels, pretty much across the world. So, and then of course hand sanitizer. And you know, it's quite interesting to watch people with hand sanitizer. Those people who just give it a quick flick and just take probably just a small bubble, versus those other people who will pump it 2 or 3 times. And so we can straight away see what sort of people are walking into our establishment or on board by the way that, you know, this is part of the new body language or non-verbal communication, is how much hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
For goodness sake, so much of it in the world now, we don't have a real problem with it. We won't be running out anytime soon. Standard branded introduction, which is necessary. Then the COVID registration, which is mostly using QR codes, much the same for restaurants. I'm not sure whether that's the case in Europe, but certainly here in Australia and Asia, that's being used widely. And then, of course, face masks. Many of them, as one of our lovely viewers said, they've got some very pretty masks. Some of the options are absolutely beautiful, bespoke varieties, so they can be elegant. Then there's antiseptic wipes, which you know, are mandatory in many situations. And then, of course, there's the standards that are invoked by the hotel group or the management group. They can be different, the standard operating procedures and the recommendations. Social distancing is different in different parts of the world. And then, of course, you've got your usual sanitation methods, i.e., which we're going to talk about later on. So over to you, Kim, on board.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, as you've mentioned the word mandatory a few times when speaking about what's actually happening in luxury hotels. And unless something has actually been specified by the management company, I'm not sure if anything on board is actually 100% mandatory. Yes. So some boats, and it's really interesting who has what in place and what they are actually doing. But some of the options that have been present on board. Obviously, we've got the body temperature scanner again on entry to the vessel, hand sanitizers both on the main deck, throughout the interior and the day heads as well. Various face masks, both the disposable and the silk variety. Some of even having lovely custom-made ones, for the boat, especially for the children. Nice little ones for the little people. Again, antiseptic wipes, shipyard regulations, management company regulations, and some vessels will actually have these printed out on the main deck aft in a binder, ready for for people to see should they wish to take a look at them. I don't know really of many people who do want to see that, but they are there.
The ones that you were talking about earlier, they were about 8 pages long or something, were they?
Yeah. Again, the one from the shipyard, yes, that was 8 to 9 pages long, and I must say it was quite detailed. And I was actually quite impressed that they'd gone to to that much detail. Again, obviously just covering themselves to make sure that everything is. Yeah, exactly. Social distancing, well, it's a bit of a challenge in a confined space on a boat anyway, but perhaps a little bit more awareness of how close we are getting to our guests, and then also obviously pure air systems, ozone cleaning, etc. I know of a few boats that are actually making use of that, but as you said, nothing on board, so to speak, is mandatory, and it's very often determined either by the management company or say by the captain on board, and what the owner wants, of course.
Yes, absolutely. These are just some of the examples of the measures that are being taken in different situations here. You have fogging, you have robots which are being invoked. The first one was the Waldorf in New York, I think, to use the robot. And I think, Kim, you said that people would be very aware or be much have some knowledge about the ozone, or the clean air.
Yeah, exactly. There are companies who are going around, using the pure air systems, using the ozone systems to disinfect and clean, the interior of the vessels, especially charter vessels. Who there are still a few boats out there that are having a good season, and they've got quite a few charters on the go. And it is one of the things that the vessels have decided to do, to be able to say to their guests, look, we've had the whole vessel, professionally, cleaned, sterilized, for your protection.
Yes, and I think that if you were to go into a suite or a cabin or something and see somebody fogging like that, it would probably scare the living daylights out.
Exactly.
But that's the job.
Yeah.
And one of the things on the next slide was about the thermal scanners, and I wasn't sure whether many people knew that in fact the thermal scanners, there is a misconception about those. Cannot detect COVID-19. They are just used to detect a temperature and should only be and that a lot of people just don't like the thermal scanners. They don't see the point of it, and I'm not playing devil's advocate here, but I can understand why people would make that argument, because they are more accurate than they are effective. I think that's probably the way to explain them. So even if you have got a thermal scanner on there and somebody has got a high temperature, it might only just be that they've just had a cup of coffee, or they are feeling hot, or whatever reason.
Yeah.
And or they may do.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Absolutely.
a tool, not a diagnosis.
Precisely.
And the other thing I mentioned way back about emails and giving people a chance to anticipate different things and manage their expectations, but also QR codes are widely used. And if you go to many restaurants or many situations now where you have to register your attendance at that property or on board, a QR code is used, and that takes all your information straight to it. So I just brought that up because that is something that is being used extensively. And for those who want to, they can hover over that QR code and it will take them to the World Health Organization.
Absolutely. The QR codes could also be useful, for example, if you have one that is linked to the management company's policy or to the shipyard's policy or any onboard precautions that are already in place. That you don't need to have a printed out document necessarily, but you could just have a QR code on the side or even in the guests folder in each of the guest cabins, and they can hover over that and have a look and see, what's going on.
And a QR code is not just necessarily a link to a website; it can be for a PDF as well, so that you can open a PDF and read it or download it. So
could be quite useful. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's useful. Yes.
Yeah.
And then we come to the handshake. Well, we've talked a little bit about social distancing and whether should what distance they should keep and things like that. But I thought I would just bring up this business of to shake or not to shake, because Kim, you mentioned that guests would be coming on board. They would be already very likely to have the hand offered to. And whereas normally, we wouldn't worry about that, but at the moment, a lot of people are being advised not to shake hands. However, I take a little bit of a different tack with that, because I also think, that when I'm doing my training, I will show people, if you see somebody who wants to hug you and you don't want to hug them, well, I can show you a way that you can get over that. But when it comes to the handshake, it can be a bit offensive if somebody holds their hand out and you then say, no, I don't shake, I don't handshake. However, I don't see anything wrong in getting the hand sanitizer. For heaven's sake, that's what it's for. And sanitizing your hands and then shaking hands. Much in the same way that the Queen of England never takes her gloves off and she uses a gloved hand to shake hands. We do it the other way, and you just make sure that you sanitize. And Kim, you mentioned a system which could be invoked, and that was that.
Absolutely. I mean, if it is policy on board that you usually do the lineup of everybody on the dock or everybody on the aft deck when the guests do arrive, if all the crew members do make sure that they sanitize their hands before the guests arrive. Obviously, we don't necessarily want to be doing that in front of the guests. And then if the boss or if the guests offer to shake the hand, obviously we don't want to really refuse and cause offense. You can shake their hand, and then afterwards, once they've gone inside, you can sanitize your hands again. Really very discreetly without causing offense. As you said, Josephine, we don't want to be upsetting anyone. Certainly don't want to be upsetting the boss. But if he or she is coming in and would like to do the handshake, I agree with you. I'd probably be offering my hand.
I think so too. And as I say, what's the point of having hand sanitizer if you're not using that instance? And it is a warm thing to do, and in these times we need all the warmth we can get
Exactly.
in terms of personality and things, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. You did mention something about the social distancing as well, and that's something that perhaps this season in particular might be quite challenging. In terms of how close do we actually get to our guests in physical proximity when we're doing service around the table? Obviously, we need to be fairly up close and personal, especially if we are doing silver service. But now more so than ever, I think it's quite important that we are aware of our distance from our guests. Obviously, we don't want to stand 2 meters away, acting as if they have a giant lurgy that we might catch, because we don't want them to feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, some of us, when we communicate without realizing, we tend to maybe touch someone's arm, or our guests may even do that to us. So I would say perhaps try and be aware of your interactions with your guests.
And I agree. And I when we were talking through the content for this webinar, we were talking about when you were serving at table, and we realised that was potentially an area where, from a social distancing point of view, that was going to be very, very difficult to manage. And it would be easy just to sort of, when you were serving somebody, putting their plate down and the guest says something to you, that you turn naturally to speak to them, and you're really just too close to them. So my suggestion would be that you could probably speak away from, have your head slightly to one side, so that in fact when you're answering people, perhaps just speak straight ahead rather than turning and speaking directly to somebody, so that when you're just that close from somebody, you reduce the risk.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It is challenging. I think we need to read the feeling from our guests as well. If you notice that a guest is a bit more reticent, is a bit more giving you a bit more distance, then I would probably be responding in a similar fashion. If your guests are comfortable and don't mind, they just want things to be normal, which again, probably a lot of our guests just want to come to the boat, escape all the craziness of the rest of the world and just be in their normal environment, then we just react and act accordingly.
Yes, I think you're right. And I think being observant, even within our luxury service, you can step back and you can just watch people, and people will give you an indication of how they feel about the social distancing, because they'll lean back, or they'll step back, or they'll adjust their social distancing. And when you see that, you can observe that those are the people who are keen to keep those restrictions in place in their own mind for their own safety. So nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, definitely.
Now this was a question, and that's possibly been sort of answered, hasn't it, in our poll? But I had a couple of questions. I mean, masks do exactly what they do, what they say they're going to do, and they mask, don't they? So they cover your mouth, and normally we would like to see people's mouth in order to be able to understand better what they're saying. And, one of the other aspects, of course, is that somebody who is hard of hearing or who is deaf also needs to see your mouth, which is, so we have to be rather, we have to have that empathy, maybe then just take the mask off. And we were talking about the way that people wear their masks, whether they dangling from one ear or whether they take it down underneath their chin, have a chin strap. So.
Absolutely, it's definitely and I can imagine if for whatever reason it is a requirement on board to wear a mask, making a bed with a mask on is going to be pretty challenging. And I know the temptation is there when the guests are not in the cabin, just unhook it, and maybe even just have it hanging over the side of your ear, for example. It may be an idea, within the team to just say, okay, guys, when our guests are not around, or when we're in the pantry, we all pull our masks down. So that everyone is seen to be doing the same thing across the board with masks on, and then even during the out of guest view moments, that everyone is still doing the same thing. I know on a couple of charter boats, they the team wear the masks for the first 1 or 2 days, and then after that, the guests are comfortable and happy, and then the crew will then remove the masks, and they don't need to do any service from there either.
Well, you mentioned, about being in the cabin. Well, I mean, it would be hard work. I mean, if you're doing something very strenuous, not to have a ventilator mask all the time.
Absolutely.
But you really have a mask that is quite comfortable if you are. Kim, just prompts me to say that we had a couple of questions coming on email. We've got a crew member who would, excuse me reading this, we've got a crew member who would like to wear a mask. Is it acceptable for just one person to wear a mask, do you think?
Yeah, that was one of our tricky situations. If there is one person who really is not comfortable not wearing a mask, is it okay for that one person to do that, or should everyone within the crew be doing the same thing?
And I think we pretty much answered that earlier, that really everybody's got to sort of look the same, haven't they? Otherwise it just singles one person out. So when you single one person out, then the guests might get a bit concerned. Oh, has that person for some reason or other been in touch with somebody with COVID-19? So
exactly.
But I think another question, which I think is probably quite close to many of our hearts, is if I have to wear a mask, I'm worried about spots and pimples. And I think that's not just for the girls, it's for the boys as well. I mean, that when you are wearing a mask, it is going to get sort of hot and sweaty behind that. So, and it could breakouts, I guess. So, have you got any advice on that, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. It is important to try and find the right type of mask for your skin. Some people naturally have more sensitive skin, and they respond better to certain fabrics or certain materials. Others respond better to the disposable masks. So again, try and find out which material or which mask actually works best for your skin. When they say for the fabric masks that we should actually be hand washing them in a disinfectant little antibacterial soap, to make sure that we really are killing anything that might be on there. And then also to consider, if you can take the mask down, obviously, as much as is possible, that will obviously free up a bit of breathing room for your face. But you may want to consider also perhaps just having some face wipes on standby in the pantry, where you can just discreetly wipe this area of your face if you are concerned about getting spots.
Yes, and I think that the detergents, that if it goes into a detergent wash, that could well cause a lot of aggravation to people's skin. You're right. So. Yeah,
absolutely.
We've got some practical ideas to show our ladies and gentlemen, so I'll leave you to go through those.
Yeah, fabulous. Absolutely. Yep, I contacted a few friends who are on board, and I asked them, what are you guys doing at the moment? What are the practical measures that are actually in place? And they've sent through a few photographs. Some boats are, again, owner's preference, literally doing absolutely nothing. They have as a due diligence gone with a very, very minimal hand wipes and some detergent in a little, just a small station in the main salon, and that is literally it. Obviously, at the crew entrance, they'll have the hand sanitizer, etc. But from the guest side, very, very minimalist. Whatever it is that you're doing, whatever setup you are creating, as long as it's done elegantly, as long as it looks presentable. There is unfortunately no sexy way to display masks and hand sanitizer. It is just a fact. You've just got to try and do the best that you can. Again, the very simple little setup in a nice tray in the main salon. This particular boat actually made their own natural hand sanitizer, and that was with aloe vera, vodka, essential oils, and some distilled water. So if you don't want to use vodka, you can also use high proof grain alcohol or witch hazel. and then just mix that with distilled water. There was another little recipe that came up of tea tree oil. Is obviously has great antiseptic properties, so 10 drops of tea tree essential oil, 1 tablespoon of Castile soap, which is a vegetable-based soap, very, very natural, no animal fats or any synthetic ingredients in there, and then add to that about 180 mils of distilled water. Again, pop that into a little bottle, shake it up, and have that on standby for your guests. Something a little bit stronger perhaps is 2/3 of a cup of what they call rubbing alcohol, which is probably surgical spirits for those of us from South Africa and England, 1/3 of aloe vera gel, and then a little bit of essential oils. You can always consider popping in a bit of vitamin E oil as well if you want it to be a bit softer on the hands. So there are some natural remedies, or let's say natural ways of making sanitizers out there. It doesn't all have to be the strong chemical bought products. So again, another little simple setup here. They did have a nice little note there for the guests. So really simple one in the main salon, and I believe one up in the Sky Lounge. Very, very simple one here. Remember the little decoration? I know it doesn't seem like much, but again, those small little touches, that's part of what we do, and that's part of our attention to detail. Even though it is something as mundane as a little sanitizing station, try to make it look, appealing and inviting.
And even the tray underneath looks good. It sort of really lifts it up a bit, doesn't it? So,
Exactly. And then again, a little bit more complicated one there. They've got hand wipes, masks, anti-bac wipes, and then three different gels there, and of course tissues available as well should the guests want to wipe their hands afterwards. So a little bit of everything. Again, some boats as well in the guest cabins have just popped little hand sanitizers, and also in the day heads as well. So they are available. Chances are they may not get used, but it still shows that we are doing our due diligence on board to keep our guests safe. Again, on the swim platform, some masks ready to take should they be needed if the guests are going ashore and someone's forgotten their mask. I know a lot of boats as well are doing custom-made masks for the guests with their names on them as well, which is quite a nice option to have. And then this was one for the exterior, actually. Again, gloves, masks, and various hand sanitizing gels and liquids that are presented in a nice basket like that, and then left on each of the decks outside, so that should the guests be sitting around outside and for whatever reason they feel they need to sanitize their hands, the items are there on hand. And then this was
point about the latex gloves, to make sure that you get the latex gloves that don't have the powder inside, because everybody's navy blue shorts are going to end up with white powder on them.
Absolutely. This was quite a full setup that was done main deck aft. The folder on the left-hand side includes the management company COVID policy as well. That you could use the QR code system there if you didn't want to have the whole printed out document. Again, there's a box of gloves. We've got masks there. There is a thermal scanner. I believe the next slide shows it in a bit more detail. So they've got the thermal scanner. There's antiseptic wipes as well, and then hand gel with tissues for wiping the hands there. So again, it seems to vary quite a lot from boat to boat who's doing what and what's happening. But again, it's entirely up to the crew and what the requirements actually are for that particular vessel.
Well, some lovely examples there. I think that looks terrific. I wanted to ask Onno if there were any questions at all or any feedback. We
had some feedback that there were some good tips coming in, so that's very positive. I think you guys gave a lot of information and compliments. You are 1 minute within time. Well done. And
well, thank you. I'd like to thank you for everybody being with us today. And we are offering a copy of this PowerPoint if you would like afterwards. So if anybody would like to enjoy the PowerPoint and maybe use it for training or just to recap on it.
Would you show?
It's been really enjoyable. Thank you very much.
It's been great, and we will, if you allow us, we will put up the PowerPoint as well together with the video on our website so that people can look back. The video will be on our YouTube channel. We'll make sure we share it on social media and that you get it in the email, because you guys are all registered with us, and we'll make sure that you are informed. If there are any questions, this is the moment to ask them. I see that we're running out of time, and I know quite a few of you have to get back to work. Took a bit of a break to do this lunch and learn. Dear Kim, dear Josephine, thank you very much. Thank you very much for doing this for us. And thank you everybody for tuning in, listening to us. Jana's is thanking us. Thank you so much. Very helpful. So that's kind of them. Again, if you want any more information or any more tips, Kim and Josephine are available. So if you need to get in touch with them for anything, please feel free to. They are the experts in the end. And again, delightful. This was a great Wednesday break for me. Thank you so much to both of you, and have a lovely day. All of you have a great day on the vessel or at home, wherever you are. Look after yourselves, and I sincerely hope that soon we'll be doing this physical again. But until then, online is the way to go. Thank you very much. We're out in 5, 4, 3, 2.